After you listen for 30 seconds, that counts as a play. So you already secured your 0.00001, cent for that stream or whatever. So get them to the next song so you can get the next fraction of a penny.
This is the MEC podcast episode number Lucky 27. We've all experienced the holidays. We're now in the hangover phase. How are you feeling, Dan?
I'm feeling good. I almost forgot I did forget about today's podcast until you hit me. So I just kind of got stuck in the holiday spirit, holiday laziness, I guess, the day after Christmas. A lot of my other stuff got pushed to either next week or tomorrow. So in my mind, like, everything got pushed, but you reminded me with a text, and we're back on now. So I'm in podcast mode now, but I'm feeling good. The Christmas went cool. Spent some time with fam, and couldn't ask for anything more. I'm straight.
I could ask for someone to come clean my house, but I don't think I will. Anyway, you opened a can of worms. I don't know if you opened a can of worms. Earl Sweatshirt opened a can of worms on, was it Twitter?
No, it was an interview that he did. I think it was uploaded to the Uprocks channel, and I think it was an interview with his mom, actually. I should have watched the whole thing, but I only saw like a clip of it. But before I jump into that, I want to just talk quickly about the MEC and what we have going on top of the year, because we're recharged. We got a bunch of dope new guests. I know you got a lot of dope stuff lined up for the Beat Club experience. But top of the year, we're starting our sessions off with special guest Big Ja, who I manage, who's a comedian. And some people are like, well, why are you bringing on a comedian? Well, he's built up quite the following on Facebook and YouTube and does really well. And a lot of the same things that we do with his stuff, should also be done by artists. So I think it's going to be a really dope discussion. And on top of that, sometimes he features independent artists in his sketches. And I've seen how the feature in his sketches has translated into actual streams and fans for the artists. So there definitely is a direct connection there. That's going to be a really dope discussion that I hope not too many people miss. I know this podcast is going to drop. Actually, no, there's going to be a whole week because the next MEC session we have Felicia Ross, who's an independent singer. So that's before the new year. And that's going to be dope because we typically have rappers, but she's not a rapper, and she's very successful. She creates very worldly music. She's a very dope singer, sings in multiple languages and travels and tours. So that's going to be a really dope session too. And that's before the new year. But long story short, we got a lot of dope guests to finish this year off and to start 2020 off. I think we also have Travis Thompson's manager coming on, Shelton Harris. We have the founders of Loom, which is a new kind of like social media music app. They're going to be coming on. So a lot of dope guests that I hope people join the MEC and tune in for.
Word. Yeah. The Beat Club is going to be, continuing to morph into a more interactive experience rather than just, sessions with people talking. So we're going to continue collaborating. One of our producers just got his first sale off of a collaboration. So
nice.
that occurred on Beat Club. So shout out to Bufo on the beat. That kind of thing is cool because that's really what the spirit of Beat Club to me is. It's not just us talking about what other producers have done. It's actually doing it ourselves and taking real practical and measurable steps towards our goals of making music as a living. So Earl Sweatshirt, he's been making music as a living for a while, and he said something that triggered some conversation.
Yeah, and people, because when I posted it, of course, the haters come and when we post stuff, we're not challenging the quality of anybody's music. If you're a fan of Earl Sweatshirt, great. If you're not, great. You don't need to comment on anything negative because that's never the point of our post on the Music Entrepreneur Club page. It's never to gossip. It's never to criticize anybody's music. I might do that on my Twitter account, my personal Twitter account, but that's never so if you don't like Earl Sweatshirt's music, please don't comment and let us know that. He has like 2 million monthly listeners and he stays consistent. So I don't think he cares, nor do we care. The point of the post was...
Wait, there are people who don't like Earl Sweatshirt's music?
Yeah, I mean, there's people that don't like everybody. I mean, there's
I
name
don't
an
know.
artist. Yeah, name an artist where there's
Frank
people that,
Ocean. Frank.
that
Everyone loves Frank Ocean's music.
I'm sure you can find some people that don't like Frank Ocean's music for one reason or another. I mean, but anyway, but getting to the point. So he had an interview with his mom, which is pretty interesting in and of itself to have an interview. And I think his mom is an educator. You know, he was basically saying that when he writes music now, because of shortening attention spans, including his own, he commented on, is like he doesn't really care too much about the third verse. Sometimes he omits it or he just doesn't put that much energy into the third verse because I think he feels like people don't make it that far into the song. So what I wanted to do was just kind of step back and ask people, and this is what I did on Instagram, do you care about anything else other than what you want to make when you're making music? Do you take into account market research? Do you take into account shortening attention spans? Do you take into account algorithms? Pain. If you are a producer,
If I made
if
music, if I were an artist,
if market research said
yeah,
that making beats that stopped at 97 seconds was the best thing for you, would your beats going forward stop at 97 seconds?
I would. I think I would try it out and see how it felt. And if it felt good to me, then cool. If it didn't, and it didn't really allow me to convey what I needed to convey musically, I wouldn't. And my whole thing is there's the current, right? We use this as a metaphor. You know, the mainstream. We're talking about currents here. So there's the mainstream current. For example, streaming as the predominant way to consume music is the mainstream current. So a lot of people jumped on that wave and tried to ride that current. And because there were so many people in that current, it got congested. Some people did very well. Some people didn't. Not everyone's going to do well riding the mainstream current, right? And some people went against the current and it was more difficult for them. But they said, you know what? We're going to focus on, in the case of No Name, a book club. We're going to focus on, in the case of a lot of DIY musicians, physical products such as vinyl. And by going against what everybody else was doing, they actually occupied, you know, their own stream, their own current. They created their own current that was much smaller and less strong than the mainstream current, but it was much easier for them once they got through all the hard work of, you know, pushing past the barriers and psychological obstacles and the logistical problems of doing something that was, you know, not the path of least resistance. It did benefit them, and you know, there are people out there who when I go on tour with Soul, we're selling T-shirts and vinyl like crazy. Most artists these days, most recording artists these days don't even have physical CDs.
Right.
So I think what works for you and what feels right for you and what fits with your brand and your aesthetic is what you need to go with. You know, not everybody can make songs for TikTok. I don't think an artist who's been rapping for 15 years and is getting towards their 40s should be making songs for TikTok if it doesn't feel authentic to them. You know what I mean? Focus on what makes sense. However, obviously, when it comes time to release our music to the public, if we want our art to resonate with the public, then maybe we should pay attention to what the public wants. I think we should pay attention to what the audience wants.
Do we know anybody at the moment that's going against this current though? Is anybody dropping songs that are more than 5 minutes, 6 minutes? Like I feel like everybody has conformed to this, to my knowledge. I don't know, and they may not be doing it on purpose per se, but I don't know that anybody on purpose is going against this current. I might need to do my research on this.
You're saying more than 5 minutes?
like making longer songs on purpose, because like you said, the current stream is making shorter songs because attention spans are shortening, and because on Spotify, I think after 30 seconds is after you listen for 30, I think it's 30 seconds, after you listen for 30 seconds, that counts as a play. So you already secured your point 0.0001 cent for that stream or whatever. So
Right.
get them to the next song so you can get the next fraction of a penny, right? So it's not just shortening attention spans. It's also, how these streaming services pay out, right? You want to just keep getting them to the next song, so that you can rack up streams. So is there any, because I think what you're saying makes a lot of sense. Like sometimes it does make sense to go against the current, create your own stream, but at the end of the day, I think you should be mindful of market research, and you should understand the environment in which you're playing in and make conscious moves, whether you're going with the current or against it. Because if you're going against it, I think you just really need to understand like how you're moving. I'm not saying don't go against it, but you really need to have like a plan and a strategy, and it should contribute to your narrative. Like if everybody's making 1 minute songs, you're making 5 minute songs. Why? Like, why is that? I'm not saying don't do it, but is your music that amazing, or can you create a lane that's so amazing that's pulling people and making people listen longer when kind of the current technology and streaming and everybody and just kind of being bombarded with so much information, like everybody's listening shorter.
So I got some statistics on that. But this is back at the very beginning of 2019, which is from Digital Music News. The average song length on the Billboard Hot 100 has decreased by 20 seconds in the past 5 years. Songs now average 3 minutes and 30 seconds. 6% of hit songs also averaged 2 minutes and 30 seconds or shorter last year. And I mean, I think it worked well for Old Town Road, right? I mean, that was a short song, and therefore it has more replay value probably because it's catchy. You like it for I don't know what the length is. I forget. It's really short. You play it. Actually, a lot of his songs are short. You play it. You want to hear it again. Just keep playing it. Keep playing it. You're the one who said that Lil Nas X was really aware of algorithms and psychology of consumers and all that, and so maybe this was completely intentional on his part, or maybe he never intended this to be a huge hit song. I have no idea. But let me rewind to when I was performing more with well, I do this today. This is actually, I'll tell you a funny story. But back when I first started performing on stage, and we were just starting out as a rap group, whatever, and we wanted to perform our full songs because, goddamn it, everyone needed to hear the full 4 minutes where we have something to say. And we realized people were losing interest in what we were doing because after 4 minutes, is the song that good? We think it's good, but do other people think it's good? And even if it's good, do they want to hear 4 minutes of it when they're in a noisy environment, a crowded environment? There are a lot of distractions. Do they have they ever heard us before? If they haven't heard us before, do they need to hear the full 4 minutes? So we started changing, and I was doing this with every rap group that I worked with at that time. We were changing songs. We were truncating our songs. So if our song was 4 minutes, we'd only perform a minute and a half of it, and we would perform the part that we thought was the most engaging and the best suited for that environment, which was live on stage. Right. And people started liking us more and wanting to buy our music and then listen to the full 4 minute length of the song. So we tried that. Sol and I tried that in the United States. It worked fine. We tried it in France, and I remember our booking agent sat us down and was like, "Why do you guys play so small the song?" And we're like, "Because people's attention spans." No, it is not like that here. I was like, "Oh, it's interesting." In France, they have longer attention spans, which is probably true because the last time I was there, which was 2016, 2017, it was the first time I saw people with Snapchat on their phones. And I was like, oh, this is interesting. This is a change. So social media hadn't really consumed everybody. Maybe it has now. Maybe it's still kind of emerging among young people. But I don't know. I think there are ways to compromise without actually, you're compromising the fan experience without compromising your artistic integrity.
Right. Yeah, I just think you should, like I said, you should be aware of your environment. When you're playing a live show, I think even with Funk Volume, the guys would do like a verse, maybe two verses of a song that originally had three verses, but a live show, and think about a DJ too, right? Like a DJ is constantly changing the energy, bringing things up, bringing things down, and just changing the vibe and the emotions in the room. And I think that's important with a live show. So especially if people aren't really familiar with your music. So performing a song for 4 minutes, at least in the States, is going to be a tough thing to do unless that song is really hitting. I can see how, people in Europe still have probably, it's not as fast of a pace there, right? Like they still, spend time just at lunch. And, when you're eating in Europe, you kind of have to like flag them down for the bill when you're eating. Right. Opposed to here, they're putting the bill right in your face to try to turn over the tables, right? It's just a different pace of life. So I can see why you had that experience in France, and there's more of an appetite to hear the whole song because it's a slower pace, and people are more appreciative, maybe of the art as opposed to here where we're just kind of like rushing things through. So I think the moral of the story is you should definitely understand the market research. You should definitely understand what's happening, because I think for most people it makes sense to kind of conform a little bit, right? But if you feel like you have something special, if you feel like you're that talented to kind of like take people out of the norm, and you want to create a 50-minute song, like a 50-minute movie audio experience that's just so amazing because you're Kanye level production, maybe you can do that, and that becomes like your narrative, and you stand out even much more now because everybody's going left, you went right, but you had an amazing reason to do so that like contributes to the story that you're trying to tell.
So Kanye level production though is pretty dynamic, and it involves a lot of different parts, it involves a lot of ups and downs, it involves a lot of musicians, not just one producer. It's a lot of the music, a lot of popular music is loop based. A lot of it is a 4 or 8 measure loop over and over again, and then the chorus might change. So if the music is different, if there's some element that's moving you through an experience that isn't redundant, I think that matters. I think that matters a lot. So, for example, a lot of Wu-Tang records are long as hell because there are so many of them on the record, but they all sound different. So you want to listen to I want to listen to the whole thing. I don't necessarily want to hear a bunch of rappers who sound the same or are giving the same delivery or talking about the same stuff in the same way with the same 4-bar section of the beat playing over and over again. Maybe 2 minutes of that, maybe 2.5 minutes of that is fine. If it's a great song, maybe 3 minutes, but I don't know. Not 4 is pushing it. So we have to be realistic about what we're making, how it sounds. At some point we're just kind of just extending and prolonging, our songs just for the hell of it. So I don't know what Earl Sweatshirt's take. I mean, I feel like if you're at the point where you're not interested in really writing a third verse, or if a producer's not interested in writing a bridge, then just cut it off, because it's not, if your heart's not in it, why even deal with it? Just give the people what you were actually invested in emotionally and artistically.
Right. Did you? I never listened to it, but I know that Teairra Whack did like an Instagram album of like 1 minute songs. So she took the short attention span to the extreme, and did like 1 minute song album. I think it was like maybe 10 songs. I never listened to it, but I know that was like a big thing for her, and it kind of created a cool little narrative around like an Instagram album. And I think some artists, I don't even know if she was the first person to do that, but in terms of notoriety, it definitely helped bring her attention. Did you ever listen to that? I don't know if you call it.
I didn't listen to it, but I know that sometimes you give these examples. You're like, well, Teairra Whack did this. Teairra Whack is like the top 5% of musicians of in the hip hop sphere.
But this wasn't recent, right? This was like, I mean, she was bubbling, and this contributed to her.
But she wasn't bad. You didn't listen to it and say, oh, she's an amateur. You listened to it and said, damn, wow, this is pretty freaking amazing. I wish this were longer. I think when you have that factor of people listening and saying, damn, I wish this were longer, because all these little ass kids that were listening to Old Town Road, I really don't think Lil Nas X planned on making the biggest rap song for kids ever, but he did. But all these little kids that listen to Old Town Road and it's, as short as it is, play it again. What are they telling their parents? Play it again. What are they telling their Google Home? Google, play that again, because they want to hear it again. And if
right.
you can create that desire in a listener, then you've just hook somebody. You did exactly what you needed to do. If someone listens to your song and says, man, I'm not interested, that was forgettable, I just want to move on from this, then you kind of failed. I mean, I feel like that's how it is with all art. If your art is forgettable, if it doesn't make people think about it, if it doesn't inspire somebody to act, or it doesn't challenge somebody so that they're pondering it, what is it? What did you accomplish?
Right. For sure. I think we killed that topic. I know you had some things you wanted to talk about.
Yeah, streaming. So I know last time I talked about YouTube reporting plays to Billboard and everything that came with that. And for the longest time, I've been saying that YouTube needs competition. It doesn't seem to be coming anytime soon. However, in the streaming space, there's tons of competition, and I wish YouTube were like that. I wish the video hosting, online video streaming space were just as competitive as streaming, because you have Spotify, and then Tidal came up, and then Apple Music jumped in, and blah blah blah. So Amazon has had a streaming service. I didn't really know that, but I live under a rock.
I didn't know that either. What's it called?
I don't know, but I know that now it's free. So now they've made it free, and apparently their catalog is smaller than their competitors like Spotify, and their list of features is shorter too. But this is what TechCrunch wrote. It's an article I wrote. Amazon is making its music streaming service free. I guess it's just called Amazon Streaming. I don't know. The company previously offered free.
Are you talking about their music service or or video streaming? Because I knew that. I mean, everybody knows that. Well, not everybody, but Amazon's been having a music streaming service.
Yeah, music. I didn't know that. I didn't know they had a music streaming service that was really like Spotify.
Oh, okay. Yeah, no, they do, and it probably has. If I was to guess, it probably has like 6-7% market share, something like that, because of their Prime.
Yeah,
everybody.
And I think that's the reason. I think they're trying to tease Prime out for people more, because now it's free, and. I read another article, Digital Music News writes, earlier this year. So this is the part that the people listening to this podcast might be a little frustrated with, and why maybe this news isn't that big of a deal to most of us. The Tricord has found Amazon paid independent artists 0.0074 cents on average per play, I guess. The number has now plummeted to almost half that, 0.00402. cents per play. So it's even lower than Spotify on, when people make those lists of which streaming service pays the most. And those numbers are really problematic because we have no idea. It depends on all these different factors. So now people are thinking that averages mean, in all practical terms, this is exactly what you're getting, and that's not true. But it looks as though Amazon streaming royalties are lower than kind of everyone else's. But now there's a new rival that is jumping into the streaming universe, which is ByteDance. And ByteDance, I never heard of the company. Have you heard of ByteDance?
That's TikTok.
Okay, so a lot of people probably just think TikTok is its own thing. ByteDance is the parent company of TikTok.
Yeah.
See, this is why we're friends, because you know a lot of stuff. So the parent company of TikTok plans to release a music streaming service. It was reported in a lot of articles that this could happen before 2020. Obviously, unless it launches next week, that's not going to happen. It will be integrated into TikTok. And so this is the part that's crazy. So if you have a music streaming service that's integrated into an already popular platform that isn't a music streaming service to begin with, I can see that doing really well. So I had to look up to see what kind of damage this could do in terms of snatching up newer users or maybe taking people from the other platforms like Apple or Spotify. And check this out. They have over 1 billion active monthly users. TikTok does. And Spotify doesn't even have half of that.
Right.
So this could, I'm sure this is causing some trepidations among the Spotify staff.
Yeah.
And
because
yeah.
I mean, Spotify's in a tough place, right? I mean, you mentioned Amazon, we know Apple Music, even TikTok or ByteDance, whatever. Like with Spotify, music streaming and podcast streaming, like that's their core business, right?
Yeah.
Like Amazon makes a shitload of money, doing other things. Like music streaming is going to be probably a fraction of 1% of their overall revenue. So they can use that as kind of like a loss leader to just sell their other products. They don't really care. They probably don't care about like that being like a portion of their business is going to bring in a lot of profit. Like they can lose money on music, whatever, as long as they're selling more Prime memberships and selling more shit through Amazon. Like that's why Amazon is really, that's why Spotify is really kind of in a tough position from my perspective, because Apple, they can lose a bunch of money on music too. They sell phones, they sell computers. TikTok is a social media giant. They're going to have money coming in from ads and stuff like that. So I think Spotify is in a really tough position. And if you're investing in Spotify at this point, then you probably know something that I don't, because I'd be kind of scared with the competitors that are out there.
Well, Spotify does have another trick up its sleeve. According to a Variety magazine article, Spotify is launching its own music awards now, which I think makes sense, just like the YouTube charts make sense. And they write, it's essentially Spotify's in-house version of the Billboard Music Awards, for which most finalists and winners are based on sales, streaming, and user engagement data. The other big music biz kudocasts are I don't know what the hell this is. Anyway, this actually has a launch date, which is March 2020. And
the awards?
The awards, yep. They've actually scheduled it. It's going to happen. At least that's what's reported. I think they have multiple dates scheduled in different places around the world. So that that's one of those things that can bring a ton of new eyes and ears to that platform. Granted, any platform could do that. I mean, TikTok could do that too. TikTok could have the TikTok Awards. I think YouTube has, YouTube has an award show of their own, right?
I just went to, like, me and Big Jaw just went to it. It's called the Streamy Awards. So yeah, it celebrates the YouTubers that do well. It's actually an interesting experience. So yeah, they have the stream, and it continues to grow every year. So I don't really know. I mean, I think it's cool. It's a cool step for Spotify to have awards. Is that as powerful as having like the information of like millions and millions of Prime members that you immediately give free access to music? Is that as powerful as having a billion young users at that, right? Like young, and I think that's important and powerful of like having young people, you know, a billion of them like having, well, millions of them asking their parents to subscribe to, TikTok's new music service. I don't know, but it makes sense. I mean, Spotify's gonna have to continue to like dig deep and really have like a clear strategy. I mean, I think they'll continue to be around, but they have to not fear, but they have to be made aware of this increased competition in the space for sure.
And of course, I'm thinking, how does this affect or help unsigned musicians? And with TikTok, I was a little more hopeful because TikTok is not yet one of those platforms that's so embedded in the traditional music industry, the way that Spotify is, the way that Apple is. All of these platforms, with the exception of YouTube on the video side, because a lot of those creators are still independent. They're just huge. They're just multimillionaires, but they did start as small independent creators. They weren't signed to any major networks. They weren't signed to any major labels. A lot of people did grow big organic independent careers off of YouTube, and you're seeing people grow organically on TikTok too. I mean, Lil Nas X. There's that other guy, the so-called core rapper. I don't know. I forget his name. This dude with crazy hair. But a lot of people are going viral on TikTok. So could this new streaming service, help those emerging artists that are unsigned, that are not connected to the major label structures? And I think maybe, but of course, then here comes the dark cloud of reality, and that company, what are they called? ByteDance.
Yeah.
Yeah, ByteDance. They've already apparently done some global licensing deals with majors, Warner and Universal and so forth. So it's probably going to be more of the same.
But it's not doing like more people having a subscription to a streaming service is a great thing for independent artists, no matter how much they pay, right? Like, more people having immediate access to your music gives you an opportunity to reach, a much wider audience, especially in emerging countries that now have access to, to streaming services. Your music might resonate with folks down in Brazil for some reason, right? And you might go viral in Brazil, and now you can go down and do some shows in Brazil. Like this, no matter what the fraction of a penny is that they pay, more people having immediate access to your music is a great thing for independent artists. I just want to, before people start complaining about what they're getting paid, it's a great thing.
So let me end on this final statistic, which I think is encouraging for all artists. I think this is great news. Patreon, which is not a tool of the major labels, which is not something that you see millionaire artists using, their payouts have now reached $1 billion.
Yeah.
So I feel like that's a great way to end. So we're not discouraging people, because sites like Patreon and all of these other crowdfunding platforms are still really allowing independent creators to survive. Not just musicians, inventors, all types of creative people across the globe who are offering something that's unique and being authentic and giving themselves to their fans, their supporters, their listeners, their viewers. And so to me that's encouraging, because it feels like as a artist who's just doing it by by yourself. You can get really easily discouraged. You can think that you need all of these things, these managers, superstar managers, these superstar co-signs, these major label deals, these big endorsement deals, when in reality, now being an independent creator is at least on this one platform, $1 billion industry. So you have to see it from a larger perspective and say, well, there's a lot out there. There's a lot out there for me as an independent creator.
Well, there's a connection, right, to what you talked about in terms of like streaming and, you know, a new competitor and TikTok and having more people have access to streaming because, and I've talked about this before, like a stream, you know, it might pay a fraction of a penny or whatever, and it's a very weak metric. I admit that, right? But that's your initial connection to someone, right? And it's your job to take them from a stream to a like or a follow, and then from that to a share, and then from that to maybe getting an email address, and from that to getting a phone number, and then to that to potentially, you know, contributing to your Patreon campaign. And you have to take that fan through that process. And that's why having more access to people that have a streaming platform is so vital and so important, because it's an opportunity for you to take that fan through that progression. And that progression might happen overnight, or it could happen over the course of years. But now you have a connection and an opportunity to take that initial play, all the way through to your, you know, your merchandise, your show, or your Patreon campaign. And that's ultimately, you know, why I think it's a great thing that we now have TikTok entering the market as a streaming player.
So let's talk more about, you know, your process as a creator, taking a fan through that experience and becoming an actual contributor. MusicEntrepreneurClub.com. Just sign up. The code to use is MEC Podcast. Join us for a couple of free sessions. Learn. This was episode 27. We didn't talk about any kind of alien lizard takeover or the big conspiracy to turn the Baphomet into the new deity. We're making progress. When we start laughing too much on a podcast, people start thinking that we're just bullshitting. So,
hey, this podcast is fun for me, and I might be a little bit more informal here. It's our podcast, so we have the luxury to do that, you know, where we just kind of shoot the shit and keep it real with people, and we talk how we want to talk on this podcast, but we come from a lot of experience. Payne has a lot of experience.
That's what you think, Dame.
Yeah, well, he tells me he has a lot of experience. I have quite a bit of experience, and we got a lot of stuff happening next year. I can't talk about everything because even I don't know how it's going to play out, but there's a lot of stuff that's going to be happening next year. So keep rocking with us. Like Payne said, use the code MEC Podcast. Use it at MusicEntrepreneurClub.com. Get 2 weeks free trial so you can look under the hood and see, you know, the value of our actual Monday and Tuesday night sessions. And I hope to see folks soon.